So you asked me, should you always share your opinion? I think like if I've been in situations where I went to a house party, right? My fiance and I have gone to a house party, and I know everybody in there, or 90% of the people in there. One, they have the advantages. They know my politics because they know I'm on the radio. Right. But number two, I can pretty much figure out that 90% of them voted opposite of me. So I won't share my opinion in that situation. Now, if someone asks me my opinion, I'll share it, but I won't share my opinion in those situations because it's just, I know I'm at a party, I want to have a good time, right. I want to eat, drink, watch sports, whatever it is. I'm not feeling like I want to do this right now. So that's what I mean. You should always share your opinion, but there's some times where you know, okay, I can be an asshole and share my opinion and start a fight, or, you know what I mean, I'm generally interested in hearing what these people want to say, or this person wants to hear from, you know.
So I want to get your viewpoint. Yeah. So remember I was telling you yesterday how we had the Arab speakers and the guy from Israel International Affairs, and they were saying, and honestly some of the things they said I agreed with, right, but a lot of it they didn't. And one, I was shocked because as an Arab myself, to hear like pretty pro-Israeli things being said by
other Arabs. Yeah,
like the guy sitting next to me was Egyptian. I'm Egyptian too. Like, it was blowing my mind.
Well, what was blowing your mind necessarily? Not specific content, but was just blowing your mind that Muslims were speaking positively about Israel, or what they were saying.
I've always told other people, like, I will never not talk to a Jewish person, never not interact with someone who's from Israel. Like, you need to be understanding of both sides. You can't just like, of course, someone born there with their history might be, you know what I'm saying? Like, we need to understand that. Right. The things that I was blowing my mind is I feel like they were completely disregarding like the whole part about people dying. Like, it was just like one-sided talk, no acknowledgement of like, yeah, we understand that this is happening. You know what I'm saying? Just complete that side. Right. And a student brought up a question about, like I told you, like, in Colombia they're being threatened with budget cuts if you don't handle like the anti-Semitism, or he said Zionistic viewpoints. The guy like all four of them, like completely shut her off, you know. And when I saw that happen, I was like, I feel like they're not open to have an honest conversation.
They shut off.
She shut her off. Like they're like, no, that's not true. Like this is not happening, and they just.
But it is happening.
Okay, so for me, this is like where the crossroads comes in. Is I'm willing to have a conversation about anything. Right. If you're gonna be open-minded about it. Right. But when I see you just like cut someone off. Right. Completely, like all four of them, just boom, 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 boom.
I tell you, and I've said this on my show before. I'm a free speech absolutist. You've heard me say this in your class, right? I don't equivocate. I don't dance. You know, I am a free speech absolutist. Are there consequences to free speech? Absolutely. But then it's no free speech, right? Now, it's not free speech to me to walk up to someone and call them a name, or to walk up to a woman and say what I want to her, or you're fat, you're whatever, right? There's a consequence to that. If I get punched in the face, I get punched in the face, right? I should understand that. But I think that what's going on now kind of scares me, because I'll start with Columbia losing, Columbia and other universities losing money. The only reason a university should lose money is by kids deciding they don't want to go there. Mm-hmm. So if a slew of Jewish kids decide they don't want to go to Columbia, that's good, good for them, right? But I don't think that any government should get involved in cracking down. As heinous as some of the things that were said on that campus, and truly there was some disgusting things said about a group of people, and as much as Jewish students were not allowed to go into class or were put in fear of their lives, which is disgusting as well, I don't think the university should have been necessarily punished. The university should self-police themselves. Now, that being said, I think Columbia and other universities did a horrible job at policing and protecting what are their students. Because I'm sending my kid there to learn, I'm not sending my kid there to be in fear of their life. And I always use this example. If that was a bunch of white students protesting black kids, it would have been received completely different, right? Mm-hmm. And so there is free speech. I think the universities should have done a better job of policing themselves, right? And I get, when I was in Syracuse, apartheid was a big issue. Defunding, what was it called? I forgot the name of it, but it was getting out of South Africa, getting businesses, like our University, Syracuse at the time was invested in business.
Yeah, same thing's happening right now.
Right,
Yeah,
right here.
yeah.
So the divestment, divest in South Africa, that was the big issue when I was in school. The difference is we were protesting South Africa and what it was doing to its citizens, and asking the university to pull your money from South Africa so they can unless they make a change, right? And this happened all across the country. This was a huge movement. In the movement that you kids had here at Emory and other campuses across the nation was a similar movement of divestment from Israel. Now, whatever side you fall on that issue, I'm not here to argue for or against. I'm just saying, as students, you should have been allowed to do that. As students, because this is where it happens. If you're not allowed to freely express your opinions on a college campus, then I'm not allowed to freely express my opinions anywhere else. Because college campus is where you should be allowed to freely express your opinion, no matter what that opinion is. So I have not been for any of the argument. Let the argument stand where it is. When they showed images, and we were on our show the night when the state police cracked down here at Emory, I completely went against it. I was like, this is horrible. Why is this police officers flying across the lawn tackling a kid? You know what I mean? Like, I didn't agree with it. I didn't agree with the imagery. I didn't agree with it at all. Because nothing had been broken, nothing had been stomped out, no fires had been set. And then what it did also was escalate the students' anger. And then you also had students that were never involved in a protest on either side get involved, not because they all of a sudden became pro-Israel or anti-Israel or pro-Palestine or anti-Jewish, whatever. They got involved because they're like, whoa, 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 what do you mean we can't protest? You know? And so, I that's where I stand on that. I just don't believe a college campus should be free for anybody to have as radical, as stupid, whatever the ideas that you have. I don't agree with kids being sent to jail for participating in protests or on student visas. I publicly said that on my show. I'm a free speech absolutist. I just believe that you should be allowed to say whatever the hell you want to say when you want to say it. And if you're telling me, a lot of people when I say that will say back to me, well then there's always consequences. Well then it's not free speech by definition. If there are consequences to me saying something, then I don't have free speech, So
before we move on, I want to touch one more thing. When someone's not open-minded though to what you have to say, would you still share your opinion?
If I know the person's not open-minded, I usually just stop the conversation because there's no point.
Okay.
Because everyone knows that I'm on the radio and they know I have opinions, people will come up to me out and about and say, hey, I love your show. I heard you say this. I disagree. Right. That person I'll talk back and forth with. But if that person just has no wiggle room, because I'm the type of person, if you present me with a valid counter argument to what I'm saying, I would listen to you.
Yeah.
I may even say that's a good point, however this. You know what I mean? Because you do get in situations where someone's debating you and they make a good point.
Or do you change?
It depends on what the issue is. I have changed. I've been on the radio and a caller has called in and made a point and I've said, okay, you know what, that's a great point. I think I changed my opinion on that. Or the most I'll say is, let me think more on it because you raise a great point. You know what I mean? Obviously, if you have a well-entrenched belief that comes from a ideology or a belief system, a set of beliefs that you have as your guiding principles, it's hard. It's going to be hard for you to change on the spot. That means it wasn't a guiding principle; it's just something, an opinion. But if you make a good point, I can sit back, think about it, and make an admission and say I'm not above that. And I don't think anybody should be. I don't think anybody should be.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
So I know they're all wondering who we're talking to right now.
Yeah.
This is Mr. Shelley Wynter. So Brandon and I had the pleasure of hearing him speak in one of our classes a couple times. We were very interested to what you had to say. I mean, from my personal experience, the fact that we're at a very liberal university and you're more conservative, but you were open to having a conversation no matter what it was about. That, for me, that's my most important thing, is being open-minded. And when I saw that, I wanted to have you on the podcast just so we can like conversate and, you know, get to know more about each other's, you know,
Right.
viewpoints. So yeah, we appreciate you coming on.
No, I appreciate you guys inviting me.
Yeah, I've never been in a class where someone was able to mediate back and forth discussion like that, where people were speaking their minds, but it wasn't like to the point where people were angry at each other, but you were promoting that, like, oh, I'll listen to this side, we should talk about it. And I thought that who better than you to have on our podcast for the first episode?
Yeah.
This is the first episode?
Well,
Kind of.
We've had some other runs, but this is like our real go at
Okay.
the first episode.
Yeah.
I hope it does well.
Thank you. Yeah. You know, a lot of people have been looking for it though.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're about to get a lot of Emory students.
No problem. I hope so. I need. So the thing about radio is traditional radio. We need younger
Yeah.
listeners. So I appreciate Joe inviting me.
Yeah.
So everyone listening, please. 95.5 WSB Atlanta's News and Talk, 7 to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Yes, sir. Before we get into what we were kind of talking about earlier, can you just tell us about your upbringing, how you got involved in media?
So I grew up in Harlem, New York. My mom, Valerie Wynter, she passed 2 years ago. I miss her dearly. I lived 2 blocks away from my dad. They were separated. He lived down the block. My grandparents lived 2 blocks north. So, you know, it's like growing up in a subdivision. That's the best example. Like, you know, you grow up in a subdivision, your aunt lives over here.
Yeah.
So in New York, it's a series of blocks and neighborhoods. So I lived in the same neighborhood with my grandparents and my father and my mom and a whole big neighborhood full of people. Went to private school growing up, went to a great all-boys school called St. Bernard's, and then went to Riverdale High School, and then went to Syracuse University. And always been interested in, I don't know where it came from, but always been interested in the news. I read a lot. I'm an only child, so you know, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have cell phones when I was growing up. So my friends were television. You know, I watched a heck of a lot of television because my mom was fairly strict. I had to be inside at a certain time, and so I watched a lot of TV. Read the newspaper. I was a big reader.
Right.
Read a lot of books growing up because I was bored. There's nothing else to do. You know, I built model airplanes, but then I'd build them, and I was like, what do I do with it? I put a firecracker in the tail and throw it out the window and watch it blow up because there's nothing to do with it after you build it. But so I read a lot, and the newspaper was a big part of that reading. And I've always, you know, I guess started then. I was interested in the news. In New York City, we had 3 newspapers: Daily News, New York Times, and the New York Post.
Right.
So there's a lady that lived in our neighborhood who worked. So every morning she'd get up and go to work on the train, and she'd buy the Daily News. What we would do is put our little coins together and buy the New York Post. This is during the summer when everybody's out of school. And we'd play baseball in this empty lot all day long. So by the time she got off of work, 5:30, 6 o'clock, we had read the New York Post, and we would trade with her every night. It's the most fascinating thing. I never knew what we were doing as young kids, but we would trade. We'd give her the Post, and she'd give us the Daily News. And it was interesting because my friends, we'd all, like say I had the paper, all of you guys would crowd around, and we'd read back to front because we all love sports. So we'd read the stats. Some guys are more interested in the batting averages of certain players. Some guys are more interested in the stories. But when we got to the end of sports, everyone would disappear, and I would sit there and just continue reading for no other reason except I still had the newspaper. And so I've always been interested in the news from that point on. And there's a TV show used to be on the air called Monk. I don't know, it's a detective series, and he had a line in it called "It's a gift and a curse." And so it's kind of, I remember my gift and curse, if you will, is I remember everything that's ever been said to me, everything I've ever read or seen, not like specifically, but I remember it. And so it's a gift and a curse because when you remember everything that's ever been said to you, you tend to carry slights with you for a long time, as well as compliments and stuff. But so yeah, I've just always been interested in the news and propaganda and how manipulative
Society
it can
works,
be
yeah.
and how society works.
All right.
I feel like that idea is so foreign to me. Just like the idea of sitting around with your boys, reading the newspaper together from front to back. Like nowadays, you just like go on Twitter or something.
Right.
You look at like the first few things. Like you click off, go on like the daily recap. You watch videos nowadays, obviously,
Right.
but just like the idea of you like had fun reading these newspapers.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And because and the reason why a lot of my boys, well, not everyone else, because we love sports.
Right.
So we're in New York, so we had a football team, we had a basketball team. We had
But
a
what
baseball
time period was this?
This was 80. This is like 79. I was in high school, 79 to 83, and so this was 83 to 87. It was college. College. So
Yeah.
79, 80s, early 80s. This is when it was. Early
This is
80s.
like this is before or after Bernard King in New York.
Bernard King was. At that time, Bernard King was the king of New York.
Right.
Yeah, he was
I
the king
figured.
of New York. Bernard King was the best. I would say, hands down, was the best small forward in the league at that time. I'm probably one of the greatest small forwards ever.
Yeah.
Even though, I say small forward. Did he play? He played small forward. He
Yeah.
played small forward. I would say he's small forward.
Yeah.
He had the moves of a small forward.
Yeah.
Also, what happened to the New York Times?
New York Times was just too big, and for kids that were in high school, it's too intellectual. You know what I mean? And remember, these were tabloids.
Yeah.
The New York Post and the Daily News, they were meant to be read
Fast.
as commutes
Yeah.
on the train. New York Times, excuse me, was meant to be read at your desk, at work, at lunch,
Right.
sitting up. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? The Daily News New York Post is meant to be read by your working class on the way to work
Yeah.
or on your way home.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, Brandon talks about how like obviously not no one, but we're not reading the newspaper anymore.
Right.
Is that sad to you? Do you have like sentimental value to like newspapers, or like have you?
I
like,
read them online, but what I have learned, and this is going to be probably, maybe, hopefully not, but the most interesting thing that I say. What's fascinating to me is that I was forced to read one man's opinion, let's say about Bernard King,
Yeah.
a sports writer, and the New York Knicks. I was forced to read that one guy's opinion on how good, bad, okay, whatever, mistakes, everything, right, about that one guy. So that one guy wielded all the influence on my outlook on Bernard King.
Right.
Yeah.
What I find that's great nowadays is that 100 guys have impact on my
Right. They're writing
view,
the same thing.
right, on the same thing. However, I'm one of those 100 guys because I'm on Twitter or I'm on Facebook. Take the fact that I'm on radio out of it. You guys, all four of us have the same and equal ability
Right.
to have an opinion on Bernard King. So I think that's better. Now, the problem that comes into play is that I may know nothing about basketball. And I may pop in with my opinion on Bernard King because he's in the news today because he got arrested for driving too fast. I know nothing about basketball. I know nothing about this guy, but my opinion still counts the same as you three who follow basketball every single day. That's the problem. How do you weed through? How do you weed through all the BS? When you get up and you say, I'm looking at a video, I'm looking at Twitter, I'm looking at this, how do you weed through the BS? And I think that's something we have not been able to tackle. And I guess at the end of the day, as a free speech absolutist, as I'm saying this, you kind of don't want to. You
Yeah.
kind of want to leave the marketplace to decide for themselves what's
Yeah.
real and what's not.
The idea of trading newspapers, is that because you want different opinions about
No,
different
it was
things?
just because they were too big. The New York Post had the best sports section.
Oh, okay.
The Daily News didn't have. They had a great sports section, but the New York Post, hands down, is the best sports section in the history of sports sections. That's my humble opinion. And so that's why we traded. That's why we bought the Post. She didn't like the Post because at that time, in the African American community, the New York Post was racist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So she didn't like it, but we got it for the sports, and then we wanted to read the Daily News just to have some
Yeah.
different. We just wanted to read something else when we read the Post.
Right.
So I was gonna bring up two things. You covered one of them. Anybody can say anything, and I don't know if I would say they count the same, just because like when you think of like influencers, like they can obviously influence people way more than like maybe me. Well, I mean, even your voice wouldn't count the same as like Brandon or I's, you know?
What I mean by they count the same is that they're in the same space.
Yeah, like they have the same opportunity
right.
if they can grow the same followers.
Right. But I don't know. My point is not. It's not about followers, right? My point is about the space.
Okay.
So when I read the New York Post, that one writer wrote about the New York Knicks. I only got his perspective. I wasn't in the locker room. I wasn't around the team. I only got his perspective. Now you've got a situation where you can tweet out something about Bernard King. You can tweet out something about Bernard King. Dave Portnoy's Barstool Sports can tweet out something. So yes, Barstool Sports may reach a lot more people than you guys, but it doesn't make their opinion any worse or less than. You're both in the same space.
Yeah.
You don't know. I'll give you a perfect example of what I mean. What was this story that I just saw? So the other night, Anderson, I'm going to talk about this on my show tonight. Anderson Cooper was doing a town hall with Bernie Sanders, and a lawyer, an attorney, got up to ask a question. And so Anderson Cooper says, such and such lawyer's here. She's got a question for you, Senator Sanders. And he said, she's got a question for you because it's a woman standing in front of everybody. And when she went to talk, she said, my pronouns are they, them. And Anderson Cooper says, oh, okay, sorry, like that. Bernie Sanders sit there, no one in the audience, no one says anything. Then she goes on to ask her question, which is the real story of this is, her question was, why do you think so many men are leaving the Democratic Party? Well, you kind of just illustrated that. Yeah. But the point of what I'm trying to say is, in the comments, in one of the Twitter tweets that I followed, or people that I follow on Twitter, they posted that video. And they're all outraged, this is the craziness and all that stuff. But the first comment there was what I found to be the most interesting thing. I don't know this person from Adam. They could have been a bot. I have no idea. But they mentioned that what's more interesting than her question or this whole video is the fact that nobody reacted. And it really is the most fascinating part of it.
Then no one reacted to her saying...
No one reacted at all. Bernie Sanders didn't jump up and down and say, oh, you're so stupid. Anderson didn't say, I can't believe you said that. No one in the audience booed. Like, no one reacted.
For him not getting her pronouns correct?
For the lady correcting him on her pronouns. Because he would not know she went by they, them. It's a woman standing there. You know what I mean? Yeah. So he wouldn't know. But the point is, the right now are the ones making an issue of this video. Whereas in that real-time space, no one cared. You know what I mean? Meaning that no one cared one way or the other. No one cared to say to her...
Like it's being used to push an agenda.
It doesn't mean that no one cared. Everyone just let her say what she said, let Anderson react the way he did, and she went on and asked a question. Yeah. And that thought, I didn't think of that until I saw that very first comment from that person who I don't know. And that's what I mean by everybody has an opinion because we're all in the same space commenting on the same things in real time. Right. And so I think that's what I mean. That's a perfect example of what I mean. So now, as a guy on the radio, I'm going to go on the radio tonight because that prompted a thought in my head, that prompted an opinion on my head that I'm going to go on the radio tonight and share my opinion around that video, inclusive of the person whose random comment I saw on Twitter, which was the real story.
Everything influences you,
right?
No matter who it is saying.
Everybody, everything influences everybody. So that's why I mean everyone here has a voice.
Yeah, and you think that is an example of reality not being reflected on social media? What I'm trying to say is, in reality, no one cared that she said my pronouns are they them. They let her ask the question. No one made any protest, nothing. But those people, like Bernie Sanders, is being associated with a group of people who are having outrage about that instance.
No, Bernie Sanders is not. The people having the outrage are the people on my side of the fence who are spreading the video.
But aren't they? They're looping him like, oh, like he's like being okay with this, and they're making him look a certain way.
Right, they're trying to. Yeah, they're trying to. But for the most part, so my position on that whole transgender thing, if you will, is I kind of don't care. Yeah. I grew up in New York City. Right, I partied with men who cross-dress, not one-on-one, but you know, I mean, don't clip that out by itself. But you know, I mean, I went to clubs where You danced with a girl. There were two guys standing next to you who were dancing with each other. We all were there for the music, right? So it's not something that's in that I lay awake at night about. What I do have an issue with is when you want to say I'm a guy, but I identify as a woman, and I'm going to race against women in the 400, 300. I do have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's not an issue for me. So when I've worked with people when we went to a more diverse workforce. People were given opportunity to put their pronouns in their emails. There were some people who got offended by it. I didn't care if you sent me an email and it said he, she, they, them. I think 9 times out of 10, I don't even get that far down in the email. You know what I mean? But I don't get to your signature at the end of the email. You send me an email saying, "Hey, Shelley, we have a meeting at 10 o'clock." I see who sent it to me. I don't read down to your signature, so I don't even see what your pronouns are, nor do I care. Yeah. Now, if you tell me in the hallway, "Hey, I'd like to be referred to as this," out of respect and human dignity, I'll refer to you as that. Yeah.
So, I personally don't have. I'm not saying this because I have a viewpoint. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Right. That's fine.
Have you heard of Jordan Peterson?
Yes.
Okay. So you said earlier that you're like a free speech absolutist.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, I could be wrong, but one of his biggest arguments against his pronoun stuff was that he was saying it was a violation of his free speech, because he was saying that I'm being forced to address someone in this way.
When the law gets involved, I think it's wrong. The government shouldn't dictate to me that I have to buy into what you feel about yourself. I should, as a human being, having empathy for my fellow human being, I should buy into it. Doesn't mean I go home saying that Johnny's now a girl or anything like that. It's just that you've asked me, you've requested something of me that takes nothing off my back or out of my pockets or anything to address you as you want to be addressed. If Jordan Peterson were to say, if I saw Jordan Peterson walk into a room and I said, "Oh man, what's up, Jordan?" And he said, "Please address me as Mr. Peterson." No, F you. I address you the way I want to address you. It's my freedom of speech. Yeah. What's the difference? Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So I would address anybody, however they ask me to address them. Yeah. If you're a grown man with a beard and you say, "Please address me as Miss," okay. Yeah. Miss. Now, I may think in my mind as we're talking, I have a completely different perspective on everything you're saying to me, but that's completely irrelevant.
The human respect versus what he's saying with the law about
if Georgia passed a law that said if a man wants you to address him as a woman and it's against the law not to do that, I would fight against that. I would say, no, that's not your purview.
I see what you're saying.
That's not your lane to get into. But me as a human, one-on-one with someone else, I'm always going to be nice to people. Yeah. There's a difference between making an intellectual argument for the sake of making that argument and getting clicks and getting views and stuff, and just being what old-fashioned, we old heads call it being an asshole. Yeah. You're an asshole if someone asks you to address them as Ms., even though they're a man, and you say, "No, I won't." You're just being an asshole. Yeah. And that, I'm not for that.
Yeah. This is kind of off topic, but it's around the same area. We were talking about Israel, Palestine earlier, and even that, we were talking about like apartheid, stuff like this. Do you think media has the effect of, well, I think you would agree that it dehumanizes people. Yeah. And it allows like people to do things that they wouldn't normally do.
Social media does. I think the general media does as well. One of the big things that I learned early on, I always thought if I ever was in a position to change it or do differently, I would, never knowing that I'd be on talk radio. Yeah. This was when I was younger. One of the things that I noticed when I was younger, I'd watch the news on TV with my grandparents, because I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, because my mom was a working mom. And we watched the news. My grandfather would have dinner in his little tray. My grandmother would bring him dinner. And I would sit on the couch with my little tray and eat dinner, and we'd watch the news. And there'd be a crime story. And it would be this breathless reporting of man shot in his car, leaves wife and children behind us. And then they just go right on to the next story. Mm-hmm. Well, wait a minute. What about the guy? Yeah. You just breathlessly told me about this. Want wanted to die with his twins being pallbearers. You know what I mean? Now he's lost a twin. And the other family, losing a son that, by all accounts, probably wasn't destined ever to go to jail. You know, when you talk about demographics, where he was from, all that stuff. And so it does, you know, because no one, you're not forced to care, you know.
Do you think that you've been able to accomplish that?
I think so.
Yeah.
Because I talk about these stories from the human interest part of it on my show. The story is the story, the facts are the facts, but then you can talk about the human side of everything, and that's what I try and do differently than most.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to switch to media as a whole. What are the things that you're happiest about with the media changing, and some things that, you know, we've talked about it, something that have concerned you?
I'm concerned with what we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
that everybody has an opinion.
Yeah.
For instance, I saw on Facebook where someone had posted that Representative Jasmine Crockett was taking her grandmother's Social Security check for 12 years. So that was something I saw. I question everything I see, whether it's on television, on Fox, CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, or social media. I question everything. But when I first saw that, I was like, oh, nobody believes that, right? And then I saw other people sharing it.
Yeah,
Like,
people believe that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, people really believe this. And so I think that is the problem, that social media has us all in this. If I see something that confirms my bias for the other side, I push it. And both sides are doing it. And I don't think it does anybody any good. I think it's just silly. And I say a lot of times on both sides of the aisle, I'm surprised that my vote is worth the same as this person's vote, no matter what they're voting for. There are a lot of people out there who do diligence and who they're going to vote for.
Yeah.
And I don't care who you vote for, but there are a lot of people out there that just vote. And I'm like, and the media lends to that,
Yeah.
you know, because the media found out a long time ago, not my station, by the way, and the reason why I say that is not because I work there, it's because it's true. My station is a news station. We have real journalists who say the news, and then we have talkers like me who have an opinion, and so it's a good balance, you know. But one of the things the media found out years and years and years ago is that CNN was around long before Fox News. Ted Turner founded CNN. It was CNN. Fox News came about, the reason why they started Fox News was because they realized that the media kind of had its side.
Yeah.
And Fox News was set up to give what you would call the other side. But when Fox News first came on, there really wasn't that distinct difference between the two, right? It's only recent times that we see there's a hard right and a hard left. And instead, and CNN tried, to their credit, to do down the middle. But, you know, it didn't work. You know, it didn't work. So they made a decision to go to one side. And they picked the same side as MSNBC because they made a calculated decision, birthed internally because of the people who employed there, but both business decision as well, because MSNBC was smaller, so it was easier to try and pick off their audience than it was to try and pick off the behemoth that was Fox News.
Okay.
So So I wish I had like the numbers to back this up, but I read somewhere that like media has declined in terms of views or watches, I guess, for like
CNN, Fox
Yeah,
News.
all of them have because of social media.
Yeah.
You know?
So I was gonna ask you, do you think it's solely because of social media or
I
other
think it's solely
factors?
because of social media. I also do believe in my heart of hearts that it's also because people have seen the bullshit for what it is.
Yeah, just trust.
Right. Yeah,
in
they
those-
just
okay.
don't trust them anymore. And that's on both sides. I see people that will tell me, I can't believe you watch Fox News, it's bad, it's a lie, and stuff like that. And I'll point out to them that you think the one you watch is any different. It's all a brand of entertainment. It's all a brand of bread and circuses like the Romans used to have. Keep the people busy, keep their minds off of what's really happening. Which is why it's important. Social media does exist, which is why people are gravitating towards social media. People will watch this podcast not because I'm here necessarily, and because you guys, they know you, they'll watch it for you, and they know whatever you're saying is what you truly believe. They don't have to agree with it, but they know no one's whispered in your ear. The reason why my audience listens to me every night, and a large number, 100% of my audience that listens to me at night knows Shelley's going to give me his point of view, regardless of what the popular sentiment may be.
So you're saying there's a clear distinction that you're not entertainment? Would you?
I'm entertaining.
Okay,
I'm
but
entertaining.
you said that CNN and Fox
they become my.
entertainment.
What I mean by that is they're news, but they're my team.
Yeah, I know.
Versus your team.
Yeah,
That's what
I know
I
what
mean
you're
by
saying. They're doing things to keep alive.
They keep their team going. On my show, which you'll hear me criticize. I'm conservative. You'll hear me criticize Republicans. You'll hear me. I voted for Trump 16, 20, and 24. You'll hear me criticize him. Now, do I cheer for them? Yes, I openly cheer for my side. But just like any sports fan, and I've said this on my show, I'm a Giant fan. I'm the first to criticize my Giants because I'm a fan. Same with being a conservative. I'm the first to criticize because it's my team. I want them to do better.
You have to agree though that, and this is why I wanted you on, but you have to agree that you're. It seems like you're a declining portion of like news, where
Which side?
the fact just the fact that you're able to criticize your side,
right,
no matter what, you don't see that as much anymore.
Oh no, you don't, because everyone's afraid.
Yeah, but like you see how big of a problem that is to someone like me or Brandon. Like
absolutely. So what I would tell you is make sure that you find the people that are not afraid to criticize.
Yeah, but this is the problem though. Like, this is what I'm fascinated about. You, whether you meant to or not, you read different newspapers,
right?
And now you spoke about this in class. You read everything, left, right. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Okay, but how many people are gonna take the time to even read the newspaper in the first place, let alone go through different?
That's the struggle that I struggle with. To be completely honest with you, that's the struggle that I have. I often feel like Lupe Fiasco or Common or Killer Mike, who else is a lyricist? I can't think of any others, but I often feel like they felt before they blew up. Okay? These were guys who studied the craft of hip hop, were lyrical, simile, everything, right? Which is what hip hop was designed to be. And they struggled, especially like a Common and a Lupe Fiasco. They struggled in their career. Killer Mike just got the accolades that he should have gotten 15 years ago, right? But they struggled because they were just hip hop artists.
Yeah.
They weren't rapping about B's and H's and guns and dope and all of this stuff. They were rapping about real issues, and it took them a while. I feel the same way they did, is that I'm going to be true to myself. I know most people out there want to hear
XYZ.
a cheerleader cheering for their team, and that's it. But I can't do that. I often tell people, I could go on a radio every night and push back what I really feel and cheer for my team no matter what happens. I can't sleep at night, and at that point, it's not worth doing it anymore. If just doing that, it's not worth it doing it anymore. It's just I gotta be able to sleep. So when I get off the radio every night, and I'm driving home, I want to be able to sit there and say, whatever my opinion I share tonight on whatever subject, it truly was my opinion. Now, sometime I get off the air and I'm driving home and I'm like, you know what? I should have said that differently because I'm not sure that I believe, not that I believe that, I'm not sure that I was right. Yeah. And I may think about it more and I may come on this show the next day, hey, if you missed it, here's what I said. I kind of gave it some thought and I think I might have thought that through the wrong way or whatever, came to the wrong conclusion, whatever it may be. But that's just who I am. And if people don't want to hear that, then it's up to them. I can't, but I'm not ever going to be the guy to go on the radio and just say, everything this side does is 100% correct. Everything this side does is 100% wrong. It's just, that's entertainment.
Yeah, because for me, that turns me off.
Right.
That's what I was telling you with the people.
It turns most people off.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, it turns most people off. But there are people out there that still will listen and watch. One of the keys to success for Joe Rogan is that you really don't know where Joe Rogan stands on much. He just brings on a guest that interview, and he's a great interviewer. There are people in radio who will tell you that no one wants to listen to an hour interview straight with somebody. Meanwhile, people are sitting listening to Joe Rogan interview Douglas Murray. I just watched that. It's like an hour and a half.
Yeah. Watch the whole
And I
thing.
watched the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, so the way people consume is changing. I think we need to change with it. But you know, he's a case in point. I kind of know his opinions on certain things, but I really don't. He just brings forward the great conversation.
Yeah.
And that's why I have on my show, shameless plug, I've had Democrats. I had a Democrat on last night. I had the only Palestinian American elected official on my show last night. 2 days before that, I had a Republican state senator on my show. And the same day I had the Republican state senator on my show, I had the group that came to speak to your class, Shiraka. So that's my show. I'm kind of trying to bring everybody.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Would you do it at the same time though?
Huh?
Would you bring them on at the same time?
It depends if they want to. A lot of times people don't want to.
Yeah, you said.
Yeah, so a lot of times people don't want to. I did. There's a big bill that passed the state house called on tort reform, and I brought on a Democrat, and a Republican on at the same time in the studio to debate tort reform. When they, you know, sometimes people don't mind it. A lot of times they don't, and I understand why they don't, because it's radio, and by having someone else in the studio with you, you don't get enough time to share your thoughts.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will say, "Oh, I'd rather do it. Can you just have me on and then have them on afterwards?" And then I'll say yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So you talk about how there's like a distrust in the media now, and then also like you also
They brought it on themselves. The distrust in institutions.
Yeah.
American institutions have lost a lot of trust, and that's because they've lied to the people at every level.
So, and you also say that like the problem with social media nowadays is that like people, like so many people have a say in everything that like you don't know who's credible anymore.
Well, not that you don't know who's credible anymore. You tend to follow those who agree with you.
Right.
So that becomes
The echo chamber.
becomes in and of itself a problem.
Yeah.
You know, because all you're getting is you're just getting confirmed on what you already believe. And if you already believe the world is flat, and you find
That's what you're gonna watch. Yeah.
Right. You find for 80,000 people that believe it's flat as well, then you're right. You know, now the world is flat.
So like, could you walk us through your like daily media routine in terms of what you consume, what you think that
I wake up, I usually, because I'm older and I have prostate issues, I wake up 3 times a night to go to the bathroom. This will happen to both of you as well. And, right, and every guy listening. But I wake up, I go to the bathroom. So then I finally get up in the morning, 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, I go to Fox News.
Right.
I'll watch Fox News, Fox and Friends for a couple, then I'll switch over to CNN, then I'll switch over to MSNBC.
And this is every day to a T.
Every day. And then while I'm doing that, I'm on my phone scrolling through. I have about 30 sites that I go to. And most of the sites I go to in the morning are the sites that refresh the daily news early in the morning. Some of them don't, so I don't go to those. And then throughout the day, then I'll go to Twitter, I'll go to Facebook, I'll go to TikTok, and I'll scroll through there because there's news being done there. What I stay away from is opinion, because I don't want anything messing up my opinion or getting inside my opinion. Now, for me, all of that information, all of those stories, all of those, whatever I read, is run through Shelley Wynter's filter, which is, I'm right-leaning, I'm conservative, I'm African-American, I'm from New York, all of these, I'm in love with my fiance, you know what I mean, I love my job, like all of these news stories are filtered through that prism. And so, for instance, a story that conservatives may feel strongly about, because I'm a man, because I'm black, because I'm from New York, it may not have the same impact on me, because those things also influence me. So that's what I think the beauty of listening to my show is that I have the prism through which stories are filtered into my brain. You know, there's a lot of filters there, there's a lot of things that change the perspective that I would have versus, say, another conservative talk radio host.
Right. So for someone like me and Kareem who like don't have like the setup like you do in terms of like, you know what sites to look at, a million things that you're like filtering through, are there any things in particular that you think are objectively good for people to be looking at, like consuming, just for like general knowledge, or just I don't know, just insight for a 20-year-old?
Media-wise?
Yeah. It could be a book, journal, anything. even just things you see in the news.
Okay, I would tell you. So, first, I would get my hands on a book by Thomas Sowell called Black Rednecks, White Liberals. I would get that book to give you a perspective on where people on the right are coming from. Then what I would do is buy, I think it was Chomsky who wrote Steel Guns, whatever that history book, Steel Guns, I forgot the name of it, where it talks about the conquest of world conquest by Europeans. I'd get that book because I'd give you kind of history of what happened with a slant, with a bias. You know what I mean? You want the bias, right? And then I would really, I'd look at the Wall Street Journal. I would look at Barron's. I would look at the financials because financial newspapers tend to be dollar based, and dollar's not really Republican or Democrat. But you can weed through, even though the writer may have a bias towards Trump or whatever. But I think for 20-year-old right now, your world is going to change in 2028, 2027, 2026. Your world is going to change media-wise. Because when there's no President Trump, a lot of the bias goes away. Right now, what you have is a Trump bias pro and a Trump bias anti. Obviously, the anti is much stronger than the pro. But when he's not on the playing field anymore, I think you will be able to find better outlets to go to.
Why is the anti stronger than the pro?
I think the anti is stronger than the pro because the anti is more traditional.
But he still won though.
He still won, but I'm saying your ABC, NBC, CBS, your CNN, your Fox News, all of that stuff, you're hard pressed to say Joe Rogan is more influential than those guys put together. And because those guys put together, then you're looking at culturally, look at your colleges, your Emorys that are here now, your professors by and large are anti-Trump. So that anti-Trump sentiment is much broader. Look at your Hollywood, it's much broader. Once he's gone, I think what he was able to do, and one of the reasons why I like him so much, what he was able to do was point out the hypocrisy in this country about what people feel and do not feel. He was able to point out, like the right, the people like me who like Donald Trump, we were able to say, see, we told you guys were biased. Because by him being out there, what he was able to do was bring out the true bias, not against him per se, but against conservatives.
Yeah,
and
but you do acknowledge that it's both ways.
What do you mean?
Like both sides are.
Oh yeah. There's a bias. That's what I'm saying. As a 20-year-old asking that question, wait 2 years and that bias is gone because he's gone.
But I'm saying
Fox News won't be able to tell you every single day and every single morning Republicans are right on everything. Yeah. Because Trump is gone. Right now, they're not pro-Republican, they're pro-Trump.
Yeah. And this is what I wanted to. This is what I was mentioning to you earlier. Like, I like how you had that distinction because this is where I get lost. Pro-Trump. What does that mean? Like,
what it means is that you will go on the air. I saw this week in real time. They will go on the air on Monday and say the market's not crashing, stick it out. Yeah. And then on Tuesday, when the market climbs back up, see he was all a plan. And then when it crashes back on Wednesday, they go back on the air and say act like it never happened.
No, I know what it means. I'm like rhetorical. Like, how does that even make it? Like, of course you can't be pro one person. Everyone, you're gonna have to disagree with something. How do you not have your own opinion? You know what I'm saying?
Well, but that goes back to, there are people who would say I'll say anything to be on a radio. That's why I said earlier, I won't. I'll tell you my true feelings. I can't sleep at night if I tell you anything. Yeah. But his question was more specific. Where should I go as a 20-year-old? And I'm saying if you wait 2 years, there'll be a lot more places you can go because they won't be as biased because the guy won't be there anymore.
Also, when you were saying that the anti-Trump is stronger, don't you think, though, he broke that premise when you're saying it was more traditionally based? Don't you think by him doing what he did, it kind of broke
winning?
That? By winning in the way he did, by going through podcasts, by going through social media.
I think what happened was there's two things happen at once. People distrust the traditional media outlets.
Right.
The Democrats actually were crazy right? Because they were trying to tell us that Biden was all there when even your person, even a guy like you guys who don't really follow politics every day could see that's not true.
Yeah.
You might not have had a vote. You might not have been able, no matter what, you just know
No,
you're being
everyone
lied
agrees
to.
on, yeah.
Right, you're being lied to. And so that's where, and Trump was able to, like you said, go on a podcast. And by going on a podcast, he acknowledged to young people that I understand as a 70-plus-year-old man that the world has changed.
It humanizes him.
Right, and those interviews that he did on those podcasts were not about what would you do about Russia. It was really about what is it like being a grandpa and running for president?
Have you drank stuff
right,
like that?
Right, exactly. So it totally humanized him, and I thought it was genius. And many of the traditional guys I interviewed him during the election. I had him on my show. As a matter of fact, I have a drop I start my show with every day where I saw him at Chick-fil-A when he came down here, and he saw me, and they introduced me, and he was like, hey, you guys know Shelley Wynter? You got to listen to his show. It's a great show. So, you know what I mean? So I have the President of the United States saying that on air, you know what I mean, every single night.
What'd y'all talk about?
Huh?
What'd y'all talk about?
Well, it was a quick thing. And when I interviewed him, I talked to him. When I did the interview with him, I asked him about the second term.
Yeah.
What was he going to do differently? Because he was running differently.
Yeah.
And so I asked him what he was going to do differently. I also asked him about race. I set it up by saying my mom, my family, all of them, all from New York, believe you're racist. What do you say to people who just don't want to vote for you because they believe you're racist? He answered that. And it was, and some other things I asked him about, I can't remember.
Yeah, so I have two questions follow up on that.
Huh?
One, has he, since that interview, do you feel like a lot of things that he told you he would do second term, has he lived up to that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, okay, good. Next question.
My second question is, I think people, we haven't been touching on this, but it is important to note that your family members might have the complete opposite view of you politically and might disagree on a lot of things. Mm-hmm. I was going to ask you, how do you manage that, and how has that been?
First term, it was cool. He won. Everyone knew I was supporting him. My mom knew, everything like that. They were mad election day, and then life went on.
Right.
This term, election day, I was on CNN about 2 weeks before the election. I was a guest on CNN, and I made a comment. They were talking about the black vote for Trump, and I made a comment that what I'm seeing in the streets was that African Americans who are voting for Trump, I used the old analogy that Malcolm X talked about field versus house, and because it's the slave analogy that Malcolm X made in the 60s, and I used that on CNN, and a lot of my family members were very mad at me.
Yeah.
And 2 or 3 of my family members I haven't spoken to since
because of that,
since election day. Now we have, interestingly enough, a family reunion coming up in June, and I'll see them all there. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I'm not going to bring up politics. There's no reason for me to. We won, But I thought you were going to ask me another question. In that, am I happy with everything? I am getting a little bit uneasy. A friend of mine who's a big Trump supporter told me I'm quaking in my boots. No, it's not that. It's just that I'm not in love with the guy, and I don't hate the guy. And to me, the people who love him, who believe he can do no wrong, are no different than the people who hate his guts, right? That he can do no right. I'm someone who, it's not personal with me, it's business. I cast a vote for you. I cast a vote for certain things. I'm waiting for those things to happen. I've seen a lot of other things happen beforehand. I want the things that I've voted for to happen. And so I'm looking at this from those eyes. And I'm also looking at it because I'm on the radio. I'm also looking at it from the standpoint of we have midterm elections in 2026. We also have statewide elections here in Georgia.
Yep.
And gubernatorial race and a Senate race. And so what happens with Trump does have an impact on those races here in Georgia.
Yep.
And I want Republicans to win.
Yep.
So I've got to, see this through those eyes, not just through the eyes of Trump's good, Trump's bad.
Yeah. I have a personal question.
Yes, sir.
What are your thoughts about letting someone's political views impact the way you view them as a person?
I think it's childish.
Yeah.
I think it's ultimately childish. I grew up in New York City in Harlem. I was a Giant fan. I'm a Giant fan of football, Celtic fan in basketball.
You're a Celtics fan?
Yeah, and a Mets fan in baseball.
Uh-huh.
Those are my three teams. Those are the teams I live and die for when it comes to sports.
Uh-huh.
I'm never going to say to a Cowboys fan, I can't hang out with you because you're a Cowboys fan.
But you see the difference, though.
No, I don't.
No, you have to. Because
I don't. Because to me, they're all one and the same. The Republican congressman or senator or president, the Democrat congressman or senator or president doesn't give a shit about me. So I don't put all those eggs. Yes, they do create policy, but they're going to create the policy that they've been paid to create. Let's not get it twisted. So to me, it's all the same. So if my friends, when I grew up in Harlem, I was a Celtic fan. When I was growing up in the 80s in Harlem, the Celtics were the white team because they had Bird and McHale,
Yeah.
right? But I love the Celtics because, interestingly enough, a lot of people don't know this history, the guy, Bruce Struthers, shout out to Bruce, who taught me about basketball, every African-American male in the 50s and 60s were Celtic fans because they were the team that had the first black player and the first black coach.
Yeah.
So for me, that's the guy who taught me basketball. That's why I like the Celtics. But in the 70s and 80s, they were the white team, and they were like the Duke of NBA basketball. So brothers hated the Celtics. But I'd have to tell them I'm a Celtic fan because of this history. No one ever said to me, "Oh, you like the Celtics? You can't come in my house. We can't go out and party together. You can't date my sister." You know what I mean?
But, okay, I agree with what you're saying about it being paid all this. However, though, like, at the end of the day, that's sports. I love sports.
Right.
As sports. And people who are very involved in politics and they're crazy about it.
Right.
You're talking about actions that have real life consequences on people's lives.
It depends. Yeah, it does, and on both sides. But that's still not a reason for me to say to somebody.
I agree with that.
If you're a Democrat, I'm not going to hang out with you.
Yeah.
You know?
So that's where I have a crossroads, right?
Unless if you're a politician, like say you're, I don't know, I'll throw out Marjorie Taylor Greene on the right. Who else? I'll name Jasmine Crockett on the left, right? If they wanted me to be their friends and hang out with them, I probably wouldn't, because I don't think we would have. I don't want to talk to either one of you because I think you're both crazy. Now, if I met them out and about and I didn't know who they were, I would hit on both of them. Not me. I'm in a relationship. But I'm saying if I was single, if I was a single guy in a bar and I saw Jasmine Crockett and Marjorie Taylor Greene in a bar separately, and I was single, I would hit on them. But if I realized, oh, this is Congressman Greene or Congressman Crockett, right? I would say, well, I'm not going to hang out with you guys because you're both crazy.
Because of what they believe, the political
No,
views.
because of the way they act. I'm not going to let someone's opinion of anything influence me one way or the other.
No,
now,
no matter how crazy it is.
No matter how crazy. I got friends who believe every conspiracy theory that comes down the pike. Every single one, right? I'm still friends with them. They're my boys. Now, I would have a problem. I can't be friends with someone who says, I'm a Nazi. Like if someone has a swastika on their arm, they're a Nazi. Or if somebody is a member of the KKK, or if someone espouses, I think we should take all the white people and put them on a ship and blow it up. I'm not going to be friends with that person.
Someone's racist.
Right,
like
yeah,
that.
I'm not going to be friends with those people.
So,
but just a simple policy difference between Republican and Democrat, I think it's childish to say, I'm not going to hang out with you because you're a Democrat.
100% agree. But you see how like things get tied though? How like the race gets tied in with certain things, so people just loop it as one.
Yeah,
you know,
it's easy to. It's intellectually lazy to loop everybody else in. If Brandon asked me a question and it appeared to be, hey, if he said to me, what are you on the right when I'm just slightly critical of Trump? Yeah. And when I'm slightly critical of Trump, Democrats call me up and say, oh, you're not in the cult anymore. So it's just as stupid. Yeah. Because, you know what I mean? One is saying just because I'm critical, I don't believe what I believe anymore. The other one's saying that just because I'm critical, you're not on our team anymore. Mm-hmm. It's very childish. But it is what it is. People want to be lazy intellectually and drill you down. It's easier to drill you down to one position and judge you for that than it is to think about the nuances of your positions, because that's too complicated. Mm-hmm. Can't do that.
Can we talk nuances? Can we talk? Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about budget cuts.
Yep.
Because, like I said, so for me, I'm more so on your side in terms of like, I'm not gonna be grouping people, and I'm down to have any open conversation. But a lot of people hate Trump here at Emory, mm-hmm. like a lot, to the point that you said that the second term was different.
Right.
We had teachers crying in class.
Right.
Canceling class. You know.
Which is ridiculous.
I agree. I mean, yeah, I agree. Yeah, you know, I don't want to say it, but like, right. Yeah, I agree.
It's kind of ridiculous that, you know, that you guys are paying all this money and the teacher's crying about who got elected president, but probably couldn't tell you who their city council member is, or their state rep is, or their governor is. You know what I mean? Which, in the grand scheme of things, has more of an impact on their daily life than the president of the United States does.
Yeah. Well, so this is my question then.
Uh-huh.
So you say that, however, I'm in research, he's in research, right? So right now you have a lot of labs here who are genuinely not continuing research. Right. Like they're done.
Right.
What do you have to say? Like,
I think that there are a lot of, so there's two things at work here, and I need you guys to follow me.
Okay. Oh, after this conversation, by the way, I'm tuning in.
Right. No, but I believe that, because our radio station ran the news with the research scientists and the protesting. It was like 24 people, a couple dozen people. I don't know where those budget cuts are coming from, because I don't know that the government has said, hey, Emory, no more research, right? I don't know that. I haven't heard that. No one said that to me.
What do you mean? If they're cutting money from the NIH, and Emory gets grants from the NIH to do research.
Right, and so they're cutting the money from NIH, and NIH is basically saying we're stopping all research.
No. The NIH gets money.
Right, and then NIH researchers says, we're going to do research here.
Yeah, researchers apply for grants.
Right, and then the grants come down. So what I don't know is what grants are being cut, what research is being cut. For instance, we've seen budgets where studies have been done on mice to see if mice can be turned gay for medicine, right? So, okay, is that the research being done? I don't know what the research that's being done is being done. I need to know what research is being done for me to have an opinion on budget cuts. Do I believe that this government spends way too much money on different things that it may not should spend it on? Absolutely. Are you telling me that Emory is doing research on curing AIDS? Okay, but that's been going on since the 1980s. We haven't found a cure yet. So I've got to know, when we did the story, and I talked about it on my show, my question on my show was, what research is being cut? What study is being cut? What is the study on? Mm-hmm. That's what I want to know, because then people like myself can go back to our side and say, hey man, they're studying why sickle cell only impacts African American babies, or Tay-Sachs disease only impacts Israeli or Ashkenazi Jews. Okay, that's the research they're doing. Okay, let's talk about getting that grant funding back.
Yeah, but some of that is getting cut though.
Well, then let's have that discussion on a piece-by-piece scale. What Trump and the Republicans are doing now, right? I have a household budget, right? I go to my fiance, I say, baby, we're spending way too much money. Here's the money that we have coming in. We're spending way too much. I'm cutting everything.
Let me
finish. I'm cutting everything, right? All right, babe, what do we have to pay? Well, we have to pay Social Security, we have to pay that. Okay, that's rent for the household budget. We have to pay rent, or mortgage. We have to pay car note. Okay, well, maybe we shouldn't have two cars. Maybe I drive to work, come home, you take the car. All right, so we're cutting everything. We have to cut everything at the start and then put it back in. And I think that's what, in order for us to cut our spending, everything has to be cut. And then we start back over again on the things that are totally necessary. Research grants at Emory, are research grants at Emory more important than, say, research grants at Morehouse School of Medicine? And Emory got more research grants than Morehouse School of Medicine because it's Emory. It's got a bigger endowment, more influential.
That's not why they got the grants, though.
No, I'm not saying that's why.
Yeah.
I'm just saying in general, these are the things that we have to have discussions around. So what the administration's doing is cutting everything and then starting back over. Some of these grants will come back, depending on what they're studying. They'll have to make a pitch to say will they come back.
Thing is, I understand. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and like, I understand. Like, there's definitely so much waste happening.
Right.
But I think it's irresponsible to cut it all at once.
You have to.
But you're talking about a household.
Yeah, I know.
Where you're talking about.
I get that.
But we're talking about a country.
I'm totally empathetic to that. Trust me when I tell you. There's a huge part of me that is totally empathetic. That's like, man, this sucks. There's got to be a better way. But every time I look, there is no better way.
No, but there is a better way.
Well, how do you do it?
You prepared. You go segment by segment. You don't have one person just cut everything all at once.
But you have to, because you know what happens.
We talk about scholarships.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Pell
no,
grants.
I totally do.
So what?
But here's,
like
here's the thing: if you go piece by piece, you will never get the cuts you need. You know why? So let's say we do verticals, right? And we do NIH. Let's get to the NIH. Let's cut the NIH grants, right? Let's do the verticals. NIH is in the Morehouse School of Medicine. They're at Clark. They're at FAMU. They're at Emory. They're at UGA. Just talking about Georgia.
They're everywhere.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So let's go NIH. Every single place doesn't want cuts. So it's virtually impossible for you to go piece by piece because everyone's going to have an argument. What about the scholarships? What about the households? What about the teachers? What about the research scientists? Everyone's going to have the same argument.
No. Let me say why it's different. So you said that
you do agree that everyone's going to have the same argument.
Everyone's not going to want to make cuts. That doesn't mean
no one's going to want to make cuts.
Yeah, no,
right,
I agree with that.
So you can't go piecemeal. In order to make the cuts, you have to be decisive and make the cuts. In order for them to happen. Because then what's going to happen is, so say you have a corporation. You own a corporation, you have all your staffers, all your employees, 1,000 employees, right? Brandon comes along and buys your corporation.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon, as a new owner of your corporation, is not going and sitting down with every employee to see where he's going to make the cuts. Brandon's just going to come in and cut everybody. And then what Brandon's going to do is hire some people back, hire some people that he knows to come in, but he can't go piecemeal because no one wants to get cut.
No.
So you've got to lop every head and then build it back up. You have to. There's no other way of doing it.
I see what you're saying, but here's what I'm saying.
And it's unfortunate.
But when two companies merge, it's
not a merger when he buys it, because that's what happens. Trump came in; he owns the country now.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
So he's basically Clinton's wanted to make cuts, and he did. Clinton actually fired 335,000 people, and then they hired them back as consultants when they gave the contracts for doing the work to other people. So that's how, you know what I mean? That really was truly what happened. Obama's wanted to cut the spending. Every president's want to cut spending. It's impossible to cut spending by doing it any other way, and it's unfortunate. I'm not talking about the wasteful spending, right? And now there's some question as to what cuts are wasteful spending, what cuts are necessary, because you're impacting somebody somewhere. But there's no other way to do budget cuts except to just lock every head, cut everybody, and then start back over. And then what's going to happen is people will go back to the NIH and say, this research we were doing, it's on a cure for anal cancer or vaginal cancer or whatever. This is necessary. We're losing 2 million people a year to this cancer. We need to continue to study. What about the study on mice and whether they can become gay if they take aspirin 3 times a day? There's studies where you're going to find people who are going to get left that are not going to get funded because they probably should have gotten funded in the first place. Mm-hmm. Now I don't know what studies here. I'm not speaking for Emory.
I completely understand what you're saying.
Right.
I'm just saying like one acknowledgement at least that this is not perfect. Like,
I think the Republicans and the president needs to do a better job of acknowledging the empathetic in acknowledging that people's lives are being upended. And I've said that on my show as well. Republicans need to be more empathetic as to what's going on in people's personal lives. People are being impacted. I have friends who work at the CDC who've lost their jobs. People are being impacted. And I had a friend of mine that told me when I told him that, saying, oh, the CDC, you remember what they did during COVID? I said, that's not the point. The point I'm trying to make is that people are losing their jobs. Now, I was told, and this never should have been the case, but if you grew up in a working class household, one of the things that you're told from a young age is that get a job with the government, either federal, state, or city, because you'll never get fired. You guys have heard that, I'm sure. And we're coming to that point where that is not a truism anymore, because you're being paid and you're being funded by other people's hard-earned money, and maybe that money can go someplace else. I don't think the money was designed to keep employment low by just hiring people.
So correct me if I'm wrong. So I just want to make this like a bit more educational. So we're obviously
he's the opinion guy. You're the educator.
Yeah, the budget cuts are obviously like they're for a reason, right? And we talked about research, but this is also affecting like just education in general, like K through 12.
Right.
So this money that we're saving, right, on unnecessary costs, they're going to things like border protection. And I actually want you to fill me in terms of like what else is
I want the
going
money to come back to us. So here in Georgia, the governor, whenever we have tax cuts, the governor is giving back money to taxpayers a couple times. He's been in office 7 years. Next year will be his 8th year. 6 of the 7 years that he's been in office, he's given back money to the.
So this is to increase like economic like.
Well, so no. This is what I'm saying. It's like, so if you're going to save me billions of dollars in government spending, figure out a way to get some of it back to me. I screamed that, I don't want you just to cut spending and cut, let's say the government budget is, let's say round number, $3 trillion. If you cut it down to $2 trillion, where's the other trillion going? I don't want it to go, I want it to either come back to us, the taxpayer, or go into free college or go into something else. But if you're going to give me back the money, let us get the money back. Don't just save the money.
So right now there's like no, I don't know how to say this. There's no like.
No plan?
No plan.
No, because no one knows what the savings are. So it's hard to make a plan. I would give them that. It's hard to make a plan if you don't know what the plan is. Doge is, I read yesterday, Doge has found $150 billion in waste and fraud. That's just $150 billion that is not going out of the government anymore. Okay, I don't want a piece of that. I don't need us to take that. But if you find 500 billion more, at a certain point, I'm okay with you saying, hey, we just found this money that was being wasted. Okay, then I'm okay with you giving people that have fraud, that have student loans forgiveness.
Right.
You found the money. It's one lump sum. It's bought, it's chopped off. $8 billion is gone. You just found $300 billion in waste and fraud. I feel as a human being, an American, that if everybody getting their student loan forgiveness is only $8 billion or whatever it is, then okay, take it. Or you know what I mean? It's okay with me because it's not wasteful spending anymore. You're just helping out a bunch of Americans. So I want it to come back to me in some way. I don't want the government just to see some savings and then I'm still paying the same tax rate. I'm still paying taxes. You're seeing savings, but I'm not getting any benefit from it, except for the fact that my tax dollars aren't being wasted. Which to me, tax dollars are always wasted because it's always being paid for something that I don't agree with. I don't necessarily agree with my money going to foreign countries. I don't necessarily agree with my money going to, say, research, because I have nothing to do with the research. You see what I'm saying? So, generally speaking, every dollar of my tax rate or my tax burden is being wasted somehow, with the exception of the tax dollars that go to paving the roads that I drive on.
you said that if we're gonna do this, you have to like chop it all off instead
You
of
have to
like
start
doing
off
by
somewhere.
increments. Do you think that there's like, because I don't know, do you really think that there's no other way to get this accomplished than to?
I don't think so, because
Well,
in
I have a
order
question.
to cut a budget, you're going to every single dollar that's being spent now by the government is quote unquote necessary.
Mhm.
That's why it's being spent. Someone someplace at some point deemed it necessary spending. So in order to cut back that spending, you can't do it piecemeal, because everyone's going to complain. So you have to do it in one swell swoop, stop it cold, and then build it back up. You know, and you have to.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Is it, what about, so you know how your budget's made of different things. You have
Mhm.
defense, we're talking about the big ones.
Right.
Healthcare, defense, you know, we can talk about NIH research.
Liabilities, Social
liabilities.
Security,
You have
all
so
that
many
stuff.
different segments, okay.
Right.
Why can't you have like a team for each segment and run through it? Like, cause like you
That's the heads of each thing. They've been told to go through their individual
Yeah.
agencies and look for wasteful spending, and that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing now.
Because my thing is like, I understand. I think is I'm not even denying the budget cuts. I'm
Right.
accepting it. I'm just saying though, you're doing certain things that, forget the research.
Right.
Let's talk about just K to 12 education. Like you said you
Right.
went to a all boys high school, right? You know what I'm
Junior
saying?
high. Junior high. Uh-huh.
Even people like, I'm part of Matriculate. We help students who are low income but they're high achieving.
Right.
They might be eligible for Pell Grants.
Right.
Like these are people that their life trajectory is literally changing.
But they're not. That's not being cut. That's not being cut. Pell Grants will still be delivered.
Or were there not cuts to education and like
Yeah, I mean that's what
Financial-
I read.
financial
I,
aid.
No, nothing
Like
like that.
FAFSA in general.
So fast, all of that is still there. You can still get the scholarships that you're still applying for.
but some scholarships aren't like Fulbright, for example, is a scholarship that they haven't been receiving their money.
I don't think it's like fully like cut off
Fulbright,
yet.
Fulbright people abroad. Dr. Strebe is on like the Fulbright
Yeah.
advisory
Right.
board. They have not been receiving their money.
And so, but that kid, so that kid is going to school, being paying Fulbright's paying Emory, right?
Fulbright's a national scholarship.
I know, but
yeah.
it's paying Emory for that kid to go.
For the-
over
I
and go
believe
to
so,
school.
yeah.
That's on Emory. That's on Emory. Keep paying for it. Don't ask that kid to come home. Keep paying for it. One, you've got $1 billion
But is
endowment.
Fulbright not a national scholarship?
What I'm saying to you is that you know these things are going to be funded. Emory's president, Emory's board of directors, the dean of students, everybody knows these cuts are not forever. Fulbright scholarships not going away. Let the kids stay in school until the money is rescinded and everything works its way out. Not only that, President Trump is only going to be president for another 3 years till 2028, fall of 2028. Up 27, he's basically a lame duck. So Emory's going to be here forever. So there's no reason to call a kid that's in Europe right now studying abroad on a Fulbright scholarship if you're Emory University and say we can't afford to keep you there anymore because Fulbright's not paying us anymore. That's bullshit. Emory should just be like, look, we're going through these cuts. We're going to keep funding everything, and we see how it all plays off. Emory is the people being the assholes in all of this because the government, if you're funded by the government yet you have this huge endowment, then where'd you get the endowment money from? Was that from the government too? So I think that these schools and these people that are complaining, by and large, are complaining in order to make a point to make the shame the administration in doing what it's doing, which is cutting the budget, and we'll replace the money eventually. A Fulbright scholarship is not going anyplace. And anybody, if there have been cuts to it, no kid should be sent home. That's the fault
I'm more
of the
worried.
university.
I was more talking about like the people that are in it right now.
Yeah, they should not be sent home because the scholarship is paying Emory for them to be here. Emory knows that it's charging way out of line to go to this university. First of all, they are raping these kids seriously. So on the one hand, I have a university, right, and I don't mind saying this on the campus of Emory. I said it on my show. You have a university with oodles and oodles and oodles and oodles of money and endowment, owners of multi-million dollars in profits, right? Just greedy people complaining about cuts from the government that, by the way, 90% of their population, teacher population hates the current administration. but yet they're mad at money that's not coming from the government anymore, which is not really their money, which is the taxpayers' money. And while these cuts are being made, they're also saying, oh, I'm sorry, little student whose life is going to be set because you went to Emory, you're on scholarship, you're from a lower socioeconomic class, but you worked so hard, we've got to let you go home. We can't keep you here because the government's cut the funding. That's bullshit. And we all know it's bullshit. And it's Emory using that kid's life and that kid's story to promulgate and push a story that this administration is mean and vicious. No, they're mean and vicious because they don't. That kid should not have to go.
Yeah.
Because there's no reason they're not starving for money. They should be able to educate that kid for the next 4 years, regardless of what the government does.
Yeah.
And especially if they're using the government money to educate this kid, then it's not Emory doing the nice guy thing. You're just using other people's money to play nice guy with. So I don't agree with that at all. There are a lot of people. There are a lot of people in government, at government agencies, who are pushing these narratives in order to to make everyone else hate the cuts. And one of the narratives they're pushing, like Trump wants to get rid of the slavery section at the National Museum of African American History. It's bogus. He never said that. But someone there is taking a DEI mandate and saying, oh, that means we got to get rid of slavery. Let's let everyone know he's getting rid of slavery, and we get the people outraged. Where he never said anything to that effect. Nothing. And so that's what I think is going on. If you have a kid that's here, you send me the kid that's going to school here from a lower socioeconomic status, who worked hard to get here, who's on scholarship, that Emory is telling to go home because of these cuts. I'd love to have that kid on my show and blast Emory for doing it, because there's no reason for them to send that kid home.
And I told you this earlier, but we actually yesterday had 3 Emory alumni, 1 current Emory student.
Club.
3 Emory alumni, and then 1 Emory student, had like ICE issues.
That I disagree with.
Yeah.
That I disagree with. I'd like to know why first. So let me answer the question like this: not knowing anything about the students, not knowing anything about their history, or what they're being deported for or in trouble for. But I don't agree with that. If it's what I think it is, protesting Israel or protesting for Palestine, whatever it is, if it's for that reason, I don't agree with it at all. And I've made my opinions known about that. If I said it earlier, I'm a free speech absolutist. If you're here on a student visa and you're going to college, yes, it's a privilege. Yes, you're being welcomed here, but it doesn't mean you can't complain about something that you see going on, particularly if it's people that are in your same religious group or from your same part of the world. I think that's ridiculous, and I don't agree with it at all, because what's going to happen, mark my words, there's going to be a student from UGA that goes to study abroad in Spain or England or France, who's going to be a staunch MAGA supporter, who's going to wear his MAGA hat everywhere he goes, who's going to have a Trump t-shirt on in the bar. And that university where he's studying abroad in another country is going to say, we don't like your politics, we don't think you're a good, right fit for this campus, and they're going to do the same to that kid that we're doing to these kids. And there's going to be outrage in America. Why do they treat us so good? And that's what's going to happen. And trust me, it's going to happen. Someone's going to want to make an example out of an American student studying abroad. That's happening now.
So how do you balance that? How do you balance that?
You leave them alone.
No.
Like, if you break the law, like, okay.
No, that I understand. But
if you're a student on a student visa and you smash a window, or you break a law, or you block the entrance to a classroom, you're breaking the law here.
Yeah.
Right? The local ordinance says you broke that law, put you on a plane, send you back. But
I'm saying, how do you balance that? This guy does something that you agree with, but at the same time, he does something that you absolutely disagree with.
it goes back to what I said about being friends with someone I disagree with. I can do it. It's not.
But my question is like, at what point? Because for me, that's what I'm confused at.
Right.
You know, like, at what point is it I can't vote for this person? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
No.
Like, you have X pros, X cons.
Right.
At what point does these cons add up to the point that, like, because for me, I don't.
Well, the beauty of this all is I don't have an opportunity to vote for him again. So that's why I'm slow. So it's like I'm with the guy, you won the election. Now I can slowly step away because you have no more elections coming up. I don't have to vote for you anymore. So now I'm looking at individual candidates on what they do, and I don't like this thing. Mass deportations, I get that. Guys here illegally, you come, you arrest them, you take them out the country. You told me you were going to do that. I'm not surprised. This thing with students that are on student visas, it bothers me. When I see the video of the young lady at Tufts University who wrote an op-ed, and 3 ICE guys walk up on her undercover, they don't flash their badge to the last minute, they take her phone, they take her bag and put her in cuffs, and now she's in Louisiana. You've got to, unless that lady is like a part of a cell here in America and she's just waiting for the call to blow up something on Tufts University, unless you can tell me that or show me that, that bothers the hell out of me. Now, if you've got that evidence and you can't release it now, that's fine. I will change my opinion if I find that out. But right now, I don't like what's happening with students. I think the students, if you're not allowed to protest anything on a college campus, then there's no place else, then I can't protest anything anywhere. And I don't care that you're on a student visa. Someone used the analogy to me on my show. They said, if I welcome you into my house, this is the analogy they use. If I welcome you into my house, you shouldn't be allowed to badmouth me in my own house. And I said to them, if you needed a place to stay, and you said, Shelley, here, I go to, Emory, I need a place to stay, and I let you stay in my house. Absolutely, you can come in there and be like, damn, you're messy. Damn, you have no milk. How do you make your coffee? Of course you can. Like, I'm not that childish that you can't come in my house and complain about shit. You know what I mean? Like, if anything, you should be able to. If I love you enough to let you in my house, you should be able to complain. And you should be able to wave a sign that says, down with America, all that stuff, if you want to do that. But you shouldn't be thrown out for it. Now, if you want to wave a sign saying down with America and you want to pelt the cops with bottles and you want to destroy property and you want to break, New York City police vehicles, or you want to break Columbia University windows, or you want to break the windows here at Emory, or crash into the library and set fires, now you're gone because you broke the law. You're out of here. I'll drive you to the airport myself. But other than that, just a protest, I don't see it. And I think, I look at everything, what the unintended consequences are. The unintended consequences are, eventually that's going to happen to an American student on a campus abroad. We're not going to be able to find him because they're going to throw him in jail. And the right in this country is going to be completely outraged. Yeah. And it's going to happen. A country's going to do it to us simply because we did it to them.
Yeah.
Do we know what it was for? Or, like, if it was because of protests?
No. Those 4 students?
I don't know.
Yeah. If ICE came, it could be any number of things. So that's why I said I'm not commenting on that situation. I'm commenting on just the whole situation. But again, not being privy to any of the information, not knowing the kids, I don't know.
All right.
I can only assume, just like every other student that it's happened to, it was about the protest that you had here last fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering how you're doing on time because I forgot.
Oh, I gotta go. It's 3:30. It's gonna take me. Yeah, I gotta go. Let's wrap it up.
Last thing though.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being here.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
Back on?
Genuinely been a pleasure. Seriously. I'll definitely gonna tap in 7 to 9 p.m.
Yep. I'm gonna talk about this. And it's called
Don't Take My Spot.
podcast.
Yeah. And as he was saying, since it's Don't Take My Spot, we wanted to include the theme to the end of our episodes. Before we wrap up, I think it's only right that we ask, like, why no one could take your spot in terms of, like, where you are, like, with your platform, how you've built yourself up. I've read articles about you saying how, like, you told us about your childhood, about how you went to the all-boys junior high school. But I think for you to have your own radio show, for you to have the liberty to come and talk your mind and just who you are right now, like, how do you think, like, what do you think it is about you and your story that, like, makes you you?
I'll tell you, there is no other, I'll answer this in one simple, pretty much, short paragraph. There is no conservative Trump supporter Republican, anywhere in the media that can break down Ukraine, Russia, the history of Israel and Palestine, conservative ideology versus liberal ideology, and in the same breath tell you why Rakim is the greatest lyricist of all time. Like, there's nobody that can do that, and that's why I am unique in what I do. My background, I love hip hop, I love disco, I love house music, I love women, I love sports, I love God. Like, all of that stuff makes me a truly unique individual. And the fact that I'm on the radio, all of that comes through. So, you know, my love of God makes me have empathy for cuts. I understand the political idea behind them. I understand why they're necessary. But because I love God, I have empathy for those people impacted. So, you know, I'm able to reference The Simpsons at the drop of a hat. I'm able to reference movies at the drop of a hat. I'm able to reference hip hop and hip hop thing. When we celebrated 50 years of hip hop last couple of Augusts ago, I did a whole segment on the 50th anniversary of hip hop, but I broke it down into why the socioeconomic situation in New York City in the early 70s could only spawn something like hip hop.
Yeah.
I did that. Nobody else did
So,
that.
can I tell you what I'm hearing right now? I'm hearing that you went out of your way to do research and become knowledgeable
No,
about certain
I
topics.
lived it.
Yeah.
Right.
But in addition to that,
Right.
you're able to connect with the day-to-day person
Right.
about things that allow them to kind of be open to hearing you out.
Right.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I'm just a regular dude. This conversation we had here, we had for your podcast, we could have easily been in a bar having a couple beers, having lunch, and would have had the same conversation.
Yeah.
I'm not an actor. I'm not play acting. I'm not, let me play a Republican on radio to have a job. That's not me. Everything I said on this podcast, I've either said on my show, will say one day if someone asks me,
Yeah.
or whatever. I'm a real guy. I have real friends. I have real enemies. You know what I mean? Like
You're not AI.
Right? Yeah. Everything about me, and I'm not. Clearly. I hope to make more money one day, but I'm clearly not doing this. For the money. Not yet. I'm not. I hope to make it one day, but for right now, I struggle just like everybody else. So it is what it is. But that's to answer your question, Brandon. That's why I think you should listen to me. Because I come truly, I come from a perspective that no one has out there. And I don't mean that to be egotistical or anything. I just know very, very few people. A lot of people have my background, but they're not on the radio.
Yeah.
So as a guy on the radio, a guy in media, a guy on podcasts, things like that, I have a truly unique background. I have friends that have podcasts who are former police officers who are on the right. Even they don't have the same background that I do because they're police officers. So there's a tendency to be automatically conservative because you're a police officer or you're former military or whatever. Trust me, I've been pulled over. I've had traffic violations. I've been pulled over. Oh, you failure to appear. I've been through all of that shit. You know what I mean? I've been through working man shit.
Yeah.
And I'm conservative. So I just hope that whoever's looking at me right now would tune in 7 to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Yes, sir.
95.5 FM, or if you're not in Atlanta, WSBradio.com.
Yeah. Check them out. Thank you so much. Appreciate
God
it.
bless you, brother. God bless you.
Bless you.